Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don again. Hopefully you've been watching in the past. Now, for you new viewers out there, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is that we've decided to talk about. And tonight, Daniel Shea and I will talk again. We talked some 2 or 3 years ago about Veterans for Peace and a whole bunch of other related topics. And it was such an enjoyable experience then until I wanted to have you on again. Even though you have your own show in Metro East, which is a kind of a suburb of
Gresham, yeah.
It's in Gresham, yeah. And of course we're recording this show in the Portland metro area for you viewers in other parts of the country, but we'll get to more of that later on. So the show will go again like it always has. The first part will be the bio stuff to learn a little more about who you are personally, because a few people may not remember who you are.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about Veterans for Peace and their activities and your particular activities. And before the camera started rolling, I think I decided that you don't have time to sleep, do you?
Not very much. In fact, I have to go into a sleep clinic here pretty soon just to see I'm getting enough sleep, you know.
Yeah. You look pretty peaceful, though. Are you relaxed now? You okay?
I am, yeah, I'm fine. Thank you, appreciate it.
You have a way about you that relaxes me, too, because normally, no matter who my guest is, I'm tense to some degree.
Well, I did a little Tai Chi yesterday, so that kind of helped.
Okay, shall we go through the ritual?
Sure.
And your phone name is?
Daniel J. Shea.
Daniel J. What does the J stand for?
That stands for Jerome. It was after my uncle Jerry at one point. But you know, Daniel in the Bible and Jerome, they're both sort of Catholic saint names at the time that my parents named me.
Are you Catholic?
I was. I would say I was recovering. I actually converted to Judaism many years back.
Really now?
Yeah.
Oh, about how long ago was that? 10, 5 years?
Oh, no, that was back in 1980, 81, 82, somewhere around there, 84, something like that.
Are you practicing?
Not anymore, no. You know, I was really searching for sort of a spiritual guidance. I had a child born with congenital heart disease and a number of things related to Agent Orange exposure I had in Vietnam. And my son passed away, and I was, you know, my faith and everything had been just shooken. And I had to, I was searching. I searched all kinds of religions, you know, from various Protestant religions to Hinduism and Buddhism, and they all had something that they were all seeming to say the same thing. But I didn't know enough about Eastern religions to get into it that deeply. Was raised Catholic. It was just an easy switch to go to.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and Judaism spoke to me through Reform Judaism. It was sort of a group of younger people that were in this class that I was taking. I was actually taking a class just to find out what it was about. When I wanted to convert, it was like, why would you want to be a Jew? You know, this is a rabbi telling me. And then I said, well, what do you got? You know, you don't want anybody to know.
You are bad.
Yeah. So you know, the more I studied, it's the literature that more spoke to me at the time. And I mean, the basic concept was love thy neighbor, you know, as yourself.
Of course.
And once you got that, you know, I was involved in political action. I got on the political action committee for Central American refugees at that time. Mm-hmm. And I talked my synagogue into becoming part of the Portland Sanctuary movement. I was also with another group called New Jewish Agenda at the time, which supported the two-state solution in Israel and supported Palestinian rights. And that was an organization that I was on a Central American task force. And through the combination of both the Social Action Committee at Congregation Beth Israel, I worked with other people there and got on a committee of refugees, and they did decide to join the Portland Sanctuary Coalition. and I took in a couple of refugees in my home at the time, one from Guatemala and one from El Salvador.
You're a genuine tree hugger, aren't you? Are
Yeah,
you a tree hugger?
yeah, I don't hug too many trees. I'm a city boy, but
How did you get that personality? How did you get to be the way that you are, the kind of things you're involved with?
you know, I read when I was very young. I loved reading, and I think a lot of things that I read inspired me. But my mother was a reader, and she was, you know, she had a consciousness, I think, that just taught me, you know, how to be a human being. And then in Judaism, I learned that's all it really is. Any religion should teach you how to become a human being that cares about other human beings. And once you got that, you carry it in your heart. I didn't need, I would say, you know, sort of official religious institutions anymore to tell me that.
Sure.
So I wasn't into all the ceremony and stuff, but I learned a lot, and so I always tip my hat to Judaism as my conversion, but it's, you know, it's really humanism and really caring about other human beings. And I think a lot of religions do that. But it also gave me a different perspective. It gave me a perspective. I was raised in a Christian environment, and there's a certain view there that in some religions, you know, the Jews are not appreciated, and some in most Christian religions, it's like you can't get to heaven unless you believe in Jesus, you know.
Yeah.
And there's so many people out there, if they're from Islam or Buddha, I just don't believe in that. I don't believe that those people are excluded. And when I came to those sorts of decisions, and Vietnam was part of that too, meeting people there and seeing people there and the lives they lived and their endurance and you know, and I went back to Vietnam in 2006 to an Agent Orange conference, and the forgiveness of people there, it's just incredible. And, you know, you learn that people anywhere in the world are pretty much the same as we are. They have different cultures, different language, but, you know, they love their kids, they love peace, they're trying to survive like anybody else.
Do you have 2 hours tonight? Because I can tell we need that amount of time to talk about the stories that you can tell, I'm sure. But let me continue with my cheat sheet.
Sure.
I always have a trick question for my guests. I can ask it now or later on.
You might as well ask it now.
Yeah, okay. And when and where were you born?
No, I can't remember that. I was actually born here in Portland, Oregon, and born and raised here.
Why were you born?
Well, that's up to somebody else, you know. My mom and dad got together. And my dad is, you know, I'm second generation from, he was born in Panama. So my grandmother was Panamanian, my grandfather was Irish American, and he was working down on the Panama Canal. So I also have an identity of Hispanic and or Latino, Central American, and I'm very active in those movements too. I've been a part of the Portland Central American Solidarity Committee. I've been down to Venezuela. I went to Cuba. I have a great interest. In college, I did study in Latin American history, international studies, and just a love of, you know, I also helped found with a number of young people that I was in college with in the 90s, the Chicano Student Union, which was the MECHA, and became a part of the board on the MECHA statewide, where we were working with high school students and getting them into the colleges and getting them to respect their identity and not look at, you know, when somebody, you know, the whole Chicano movement, like the Black Power movement, was, you know, it used to be a derogatory term, and people turned that around and made it a positive term. And giving that.
You're not a Jesuit?
Yeah, there you go.
Those
little bit of both, a rabbi and a Jesuit, you know, feet in two worlds there.
So we touched on education. Any information about your formal education that would be of interest to the viewers?
Well, I went back to college in 1989. I was a union worker in the printing union and got involved in a very said, a major struggle with a decertification, and I got injured on the job. And I decided, you know, my lawyers were getting rich and my doctors were getting rich, and I just decided to go back to school. And I decided I wanted to do something that I've always wanted to do, was my artwork. And I went back and started my undergraduate over again, and started from the beginning to do my undergraduate work. I did a post-bac in international studies, and finally got a minor in international economics, and then went back and did my master's in fine arts. And I all did it at Portland State. It was 10 years in college. I'm still paying student loans. or not paying them, you know. Struggling, but you know, it was a great opportunity. I think a lot of young people, you know, I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking to learn. I was looking to find out about the world, and to be able to express it in my own way. And so the art gave me a chance, and art became a part of therapy, but you know, also a creative process, and it still is. And I do artwork around issues which are political, so it's about war and peace, and those sort of I would say social commentary. You know, try to provoke the ignorant into thinking about things more often.
Now, I'm going to ask you a second trick question. The
Sure.
first one was, why were you born?
Yeah.
Because you're so interesting. Think about, don't tell me who it is, a very good friend of yours. Think about it. This person, man or woman or whatever. And if I would ask this very good friend of yours, who is Daniel? What would this person say? Daniel is what?
Well, I have so many friends, but this person I'm thinking about would probably say I was a mentor and a friend.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yeah. And your eyes say that that's true, too. Yeah, all right. Partner.
Yes, I'm married. My wife, Arlene, I think it's now 3 years.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And as I said, we had a child born with some difficulty, you know, some abnormalities, a congenital heart disease, cleft palate. My daughter was born a year later, and so they're just 1 year apart. And in 1981, he had to go for heart surgery that went bad, and he went into a coma for 7 weeks and died in my arms. So these, you know, some families break up in those situations. Somehow it brought us closer together. I don't think I would have survived. I was ready, you know, like I said, my whole world had been shaken, and so close to suicide that just having my beautiful daughter and my wife that cared and loved, we all loved each other so much, kept me on firm ground. And it still does, you know, still does. Yeah. And my daughter just had a child, so we have a grandchild now.
You have a
granddaughter.
A granddaughter.
Yeah, she was just born May 9th, so I'm very proud grandfather, you know. And she lives locally, so that's
Just
nice.
May 9th.
Yes.
That's brand new, huh?
Brand new.
Do you see her fairly often?
Try as much as I can. My wife's been over there this week. She's taking vacation so she can be with my daughter and help her out. I hope to get over to see her this weekend.
Because you're not proud of your granddaughter.
No, not at all. You know. Most beautiful baby in the world.
And you're objective.
Yeah. And one of the reasons to keep working and fighting and struggling for peace in this world, so that all children have an opportunity to grow and smile.
Doesn't it sometimes feel like it's a hopeless effort? It's fruitless, and look at the number of people for so many years who have been struggling for peace and to be recognized and loved as human beings, and so many of them aren't. Doesn't it sometimes make you feel disappointed, unhappy?
Yeah, it does, but I've seen so many victories too. I mean, when you go back in our lifestyles, you know, I mean, every time somebody said something was impossible to happen, civil rights movement, women's right to vote, various things in my own life that they said I couldn't do. I mean, when I was in high school, I dropped out. And
me too.
You know, I was one of those kids who, I mean, I don't want to say the teachers were bad or not, but they didn't have my interests. I later also found out I'm dyslexic, so I may have had, you know, a different kind of problem that they weren't able to teach me at that time. But at the same time, I remember I was, you know, not going to school as often as I should, and I was in a.
We called that hooky when I was in
Yeah.
junior high. When I dropped out.
I had a teacher who actually came in. I just finished a test, and she came back and put a big F on it. And she said, "You know why you got that?" And I said, "Well, I suppose because I didn't get the answers right." She says, "No, because your paper looks like the same as the other guys over here." I said, "Ma'am, I'm going to tell you one thing about me, is I don't lie and I don't cheat." And she says, "You calling him a cheater?" I says, "You figure it out for yourself." And she said to me that, you know, for some reason, I don't know where she said this came from, but she says, "We don't need your kind around here." And I just didn't know how to feel about that. And she says, and then she asked me, "Why are you even here in class?"
And this is in Portland?
This is in Portland. This is Washington High School. And I said to her, and I've never thought about it before, but that moment, I said, I want to go to college. It was subconsciously there. I wanted to do something more. And when I said that, she says, "Well, you don't need a high school diploma. You get a GED." So I basically flipped her off, walked out of the class, dropped out, called up a friend who was close to graduating too. Same kind of problem. We both went over and took a GED and graduated before a class. You know, it's just one of those things. I barely made it, but I did it.
You're delightful.
Yeah.
I've forgotten all this time before. I didn't ask you this question because I know it, but I want to hear you say it. Your political persuasion, are you a Tea Party member? Or
no, I wouldn't think so. I would say I'm an independent thinker. You know, I've been a number of things over the years, a Democrat for many, many years. I just find that as a veteran, I've been betrayed too many times by all the parties. I vote for issues. I don't vote for politicians. I don't trust them very much. There may be a few people, like somebody like Dennis Kucinich, or you know, a few people here or there locally that you care about that address certain issues. But I try to stay with local issues. I would say now more than anything, I probably move into the camp with Occupy. You know, the idea that we have the
you know what that means, don't you?
99% versus the 1%. You know, and I think we have to find alternatives to this so-called democracy. I think representative democracy. I'd like to see more direct democracy.
Well, I can go in all kinds of directions with you. Let me continue on with my cheat sheet here. What kind of work do you do?
Well,
what did you do by way of work?
Well, I've done a number of things, but I've been in the printing. I was in the printing industry. When I went to community college, when I came back from Vietnam, I got into graphic design, and I was looking for more printmaking sort of skills at the time in the art world. But they had a program in printing, and so I started taking classes in graphic design, and I got a job when I got out of there in the printing industry, and I worked as a press mechanic. I was a pressman for a number of years, and then I did camera stripping and plate making. That was more the prep work for the presses. Mm-hmm. And became a union shop steward, and then was elected to our union board. So, you know, and was very active in labor politics, and I a lot of things was working with the union in addressing some of the issues both locally and internationally. So I worked with a group of people that were looking at labor leaders that were being killed down in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. And we would work with the different cross-border organizing programs to support those people. And I got my union to go along with some of those things. And so I'm very proud of that. I had a lot of people that supported me. And it was a great local union. Then it merged, and through that merger, I think we lost our autonomy. But that was about the time I was just breaking apart. You know, one of the largest non-printing union companies came into Portland and started a decertification campaign. And, you know, that's about the time when unions were just starting to lose their power. And I've been reading a book on recently about the strike, you know, and how through the Taft-Hartley bill and other bills that basically begin these Supreme Court decisions and other labor laws that were in place. We weakened unions. They didn't actually exercise them until probably just after Reagan, you know, and as they started exercising those more and more, they just blatantly came right out, and unions lost, you know, the right to secondary boycotts. But the unions that won over history, I started looking at the history, and as you look at the unions that won their battles, they ignored the NLRB. They ignored the injunctions. They went ahead and struck anyhow and won because they built a solidarity. And one of the main things they really lost was stopping the means of production. It's like and then I relate this to the anti-war movement too. When we look at the anti-war movement, you know, before we even went into Iraq and Afghanistan, there were some of the major protests. We had, what, 40,000 people on the streets to stop the war before it began. And they just ignored it and went ahead and did it. Used to be, you know, get 10,000 people in a place and that would stop the government from doing something. But there was no consequence. And you can go in the street and carry signs and do anything, but if you don't have a consequence to that, they can just ignore you. It's just, you know, loud noise. And I think the Occupy movement began to see that, and it made some consequences, and people did change some things. And I think this is unions, labor unions and others have got to start working in solidarity together so that we can do it. And they do. I mean, there are, on Occupy Portland, I see there's Occupy Labor, there are all these various organizations from Portland Central Market Solidarity Committee is on there. You have artists, you have students, you have people with various skills and intelligence, education, and just people that are self-taught and brilliant and creative people. And that's what gives me the hope. When you were saying, do you despair? I do, but you know, when I see this, it gives me so much hope. And when I see a grandchild, you know, I got to believe in hope. You know, see that something's better in this world.
What's going to happen with the Occupy movement in succeeding years?
That is up to them. You know, I think it's up to all of us actually in supporting people. I have friends from all over the country that are parts of the Occupy movement. A lot of them through the veterans. Veterans for Peace actually started up what they call Veterans Peace Teams, which inspired by Scott Olson, who was hit by the canister down in Oakland and seriously injured. Veterans, and they were carrying, you know, Veterans for Peace flag. So one of the things that they've done is in New York and Chicago, they've been standing in front with numbers of veterans from IVAW, Veterans for Peace, and unaffiliated veterans, standing between the police and the occupiers to present and resist violence. We're a nonviolent organization, and we want to change the culture in this country from too much violence and this violence that leads people to go to war. So we need to change people from those attitudes. And I think that's the key thing that's happening.
Well, some people would say it's really a grandiose idea that you're going to change the system in our country is such that ordinary citizens and poor people and middle-class people will see things turn differently than the direction they're heading now. Would you give me a brief description of what Occupy is, or what the Occupy movement is about?
Well, I think what the Occupy movement is a movement that says we will not cooperate. We are not here to obey. We refuse to continue the same process, and people are building alternatives.
Nonviolent non-cooperation.
Yes. They're removing themselves from the system that is. And I just recently heard somebody, I can't remember the name, and I've actually been trying to search for it on cable radio, who was talking about that there are some cities where Occupy and others have actually changed ordinances in their city so that they no longer support the idea of corporations, that the laws that prevent them from free speech, and they say that really rule is rule of the people. It's in the Constitution, it's in the Bill of Rights, and these are the things they're doing. Now they say these ordinances are happening in various places around the country. If more and more people do this, we may, you know, they may not abide by it, but then you have a different kind of lawsuit. You have a different argument going on. And part of Occupy is raising the consciousness of people through actions that they do to raise, you know, why are you doing it? Like you asked me, what's this about, you know? This is the conversation that happens. I remember being in at the Occupy here in Portland, and there was a businessman that came in, and he says, well, he didn't support big corporations, right? But he was a businessman, and, you know, he was, there's a lot of people will talk about capitalism, and sometimes these terms turn people on and off on various switches.
Sure.
But really what you're talking about is, you know, the economic system, the way it's being played out is unfair and unjust. And our laws favor those that are monopolies in our system. And if we can change that, even this person did, and he still said to me, he says, but, you know, how can we come together? How can we talk about this? I says, you're doing it. We're talking about it.
All right. There was a result of the civil rights movement and women's suffrage. We saw a result. And the Vietnam War, there was a result of the protests and demonstrations against that. And what will be the result if the Occupy movement has that kind of success? That's why I say it's a grand idea.
It is a grand
idea. It's class warfare.
Yeah, it's class warfare, and it's also, it's a grand, you know, people need to learn to dream. As Martin Luther King said, you know, you have to dream of the ideal to get there. I don't think people know what it'll be. And that's what they're trying to dream it into existence.
Isn't the corporate media conditioning people or teaching them what it is you should think about and consider important, rather than the kinds of dreams you're talking about?
Well, they want strictly a business, privatized everything, and a consumer society, and we have to reject that. You know, we're human beings. We're not commodities. Workers are commodities. You know, we're not commodities. We are human beings, and we can't be treated like objects.
I think they'll yell at me in the control room if we don't take a break. Can we take a break in there? Because I got a hot question I want to ask you. I got 1,000 hot questions for you. Let's take a little break in the control room there, please, and turn the mics off for a few minutes. So. we're back. Now, I'm supposed to say something about when we're back here. Okay, for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about tonight. And Daniel and I are talking about his experiences as a Vietnam vet and a whole bunch of other stuff here, way beyond just the title of the show. Now, that question I was teasing you with before we had the break. You ready? Mm-hmm. Name me one or two or three or even just one person from the past or alive today who you particularly look up to or admire. Anybody come to mind? I've got my own collection.
Yes, I have a collection. I mean, there's one of my high school friends, you know, and I had gone to Vietnam, came back. He was married. I got married. I was going with my wife at the time, and I decided to get married. He became my best man, and he gave up his house so that we could have a honeymoon. I didn't have any money at the time, and later on, when my wife was pregnant with my son, we were in an apartment near PCC Cascade, and he says, "You guys need a house." I said, "We can't afford a house." He says, "You're both working. Why don't you come and live with me, and we'll put you up in our house, and you know, you don't pay rent, and we save up some money for a down payment." And I had the VA, you know, loans I could do, and we just found a house around the corner from him. So it was it was amazing. We grew up. Our kid. I mean, his kids were older than mine. He started earlier, mm-hmm. But at the same time, we were like family. And you have to and he was a union guy. He taught me a lot about union culture, and so I think he's a very intelligent man. I watched him help so many people in his family and community, and I always looked up to him, you know. And I think he's just a grand human being. And his whole family was like that. Then I had another friend.
Is he around today?
He's around today. He's retired now. He was a steam fitter. Got a good pension.
Do you think he'll ever see this show?
He may or may not. Will
you show it to him if we get you a DVD?
Yeah, I would. I'd love to.
Say something to him.
Yeah, he's Mike Walters. People should know him. At least people in my neighborhood will all know him. He's a great man.
We'll bring you a DVD of this show.
Yeah, and then there's a person. There are a number of people, but a friend of mine who passed away. Two of them recently. There was Dave Klein. Dave Klein, who happened to be co-founder of Vietnam Veterans Against the War and Veterans for Peace, mm-hmm. Became somebody who I really just met in when I went to back to Vietnam in 2006 for a Agent Orange conference. He invited me to go as a veteran. There were 5 of us veterans that went, and as I got to know him, it's like I always knew him. You know, there's just when you're in this world, there's a certain amount of people you just connect to because you're all on the same path. And he was just one of those incredible human beings. But eventually, you know, he had been wounded in Vietnam. He had overcome alcohol and drugs and stuff. But sure. You know, this stuff paid a toll on his body, and eventually, Agent Orange or whatever these various things that affected him from the war actually took his life, and he just passed away a few years ago. I did a portrait of him for our conference in last year we had here in Portland, the Veterans for Peace National Conference. Our next one's going to be in Miami in August. We do it every August. In a different state, hosted by one of our local chapters. And this year I actually curated an art show of some 13 or 14 vets and from around the country, and exhibited 2 of my own pieces. And I had that up at the Lippman Gallery at Portland State University for a month during the time the conference, we got it started while the conference was going on. And so it was a wonderful experience. I met a lot of artists and wonderful people. But Dave, I did a portrait of. And the portrait was a picture that I took in Vietnam when I was there with him, when we were in the the War Museum in Ho Chi Minh City, and he was looking at some photos, and they were photos of journalists who had taken pictures of the helicopters that were throwing out Vietnamese at those things.
Yeah.
And that's the portrait that I did of him. In fact, I have it in this, it's in the War Crimes Times. They did a
War Crimes
Times. It's put out by one of our chapters.
Can we hold that up? So
This is the portrait right down here.
Uh-huh.
That's Dave Klein.
Uh-huh.
And these are the pictures here on the wall. And this is really just a wound that never heals down here.
How about, how do you get this paper? The War Crimes Times.
Well, you can go to warcrimestimes.org.
Yeah, there we go. You're just so full of interesting stuff.
You know, and there was, I mean, there was this other artist who was an Israeli artist, Tomer Hanukkah, who I just looked up and asked him if he would donate a print, and he donated this print called The Grim Zone, and it's I don't know if you guys can see that too. That's a little print right there. It was one in which I was looking for a veteran. I was originally thinking of the protests where they put the flowers in the barrel of the rifles, you know, against the war. But he had done this with these flowers, and he's looking at, you know, he was an Israeli soldier, and he decided he was going to support us by donating that. And just an extraordinary man. That's just those kinds of people. There's another guy who I passed away recently. His name was Tom Bernard. Tom Bernard was also with Veterans for Peace. Both of these guys were in the movie Sir No Sir. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Sir No Sir is about the GI resistance movement in the Vietnam War period.
I don't remember seeing it.
It's an extraordinary film. Well, it didn't come out until 2006, but it's been shown across the country. David Zeiger had all this material that he never put together because the times just didn't seem right for it. And when the war broke out, he decided this story needed to be told because, you know, you had veterans from all over the United States and in battle that were refusing to cooperate, like the Occupy movement. They were GI resistors. There were people going to Canada. There were people going AWOL. There were, you know, these were the times when people were fragging their officers in Vietnam. These were times when, you know, they didn't know what post-traumatic stress was, but they were refusing to be a part of the war. And so Tom was one of these guys who was in intelligence, and they call them the Worms. I can't remember the acronym, but they would actually not report where people were, or villages were and stuff, and they were refusing to be a part of this anymore. And when they came back,
Operation Phoenix.
Yeah, things like that. You know, when he came back, he actually became a labor organizer. He used to, when I saw the film up in Seattle, the people that were in the film that told me, well, there's a guy down in Portland who's a labor guy, and I met Tom. We became great friends. I met his wife. Just an incredible human being. We went down to California to talk to a chapter down there and show the film Sir No Sir together, and you know, we became brothers again, like Dave. And he passed away a year or two ago with when the snow was out there. He had a heart attack and passed away, and I just didn't expect it. I mean, I really lost a friend, and these people we're all standing on their shoulders, because they were, you know, when veterans refuse to fight, there's no war to go to. And if you look back in history, and another book I was reading recently by Adam Hochschild, I believe it was, who was writing about the war to end all wars, World War I. Mm-hmm. And his book is incredible because he's telling the story of both sides. He's telling the story of those people that were willing and anxious to go to war, those people in power, those people that were from Britain. In the military is how you achieved, advancement in society, up that ladder. And they had just come out of South Africa and the Boer Wars, and they were very proud of all their military accomplishments, and they thought they could go into war against Germany. And he tells the story of the anti-war movement and the women's movement that was opposed to the war. And you hear these two stories as the whole thing goes through here. But you learn, here's the first time chemical warfare begins to be used. Because people had to dig trenches. And when they dug those trenches, because machine gun fire had been introduced. And so they had to duck down, so they ducked down in these trenches. So how could they reach the people? They created gas warfare, and that would sink down and suffocate people. And so you learn this sort of technology that advances for war, and each side learned it, and eventually the soldiers that were fighting, I mean, there was 10,000 killed in a day, There were some that drowned when the rains came, got stuck in the mud and couldn't get out. And then the soldiers, it came to a point where the soldiers were refusing to fight, and they began to just turn back and say they're going home. And it just happened that more Germans went back before the British went back, and the other, one or the other was going to do it, but they were both doing it. It's just that finally they were saying that when the Germans were walking back, their reliefs were coming, and they said, "Where are you going? We're all leaving," and they just gave up. So, I mean, these stories are important for people to understand. And if soldiers refuse to fight, there's no war. And that's
before we forget, we can go ahead. You have a thumb drive with, you said three.
Yeah, we didn't get that in there. But
can we get that in?
Yeah, I don't know if they can do it.
I don't think he
doesn't think he can do it.
Okay, we can't do it tonight.
But well, you saw the picture here. That's basically the picture that I was in the show.
Now, how about from old times? I have my collection of people I admire, look up to. I start with Jesus and Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, and Hugo Chavez. You have any quarrel with any of those?
No, not at all. And it's strange because I've been listening to people that have said, like Che Guevara was their idol, and the Fox News and the right wing are calling him a mass murderer and all these kinds of things. I mean, it's insane. As we slaughtered millions in Vietnam and around the world, people don't realize, that people are still dying because of Vietnam. Agent Orange is still affecting people. And like I said, I'm on the Agent Orange Committee, working committee for Veterans for Peace, the national. And right now in August will be, August 10th will be Agent Orange Day. And right now we're asking chapters to do something to bring awareness about it. But on the national, there's been a reintroduction of protests from Vietnam to from Bhopal, India, because Dow Chemical is one of the sponsors of the Olympics in London. Oh. And so letters have been written from the Vietnamese Women's Union, from various people, VAVA, which is the Vietnamese Victims of Agent Orange in Vietnam. There are, Bhopal, of course, lost thousands of people, some 50-some thousand, I believe, and
they're
so
still fighting to get some
still,
sort of a
that's right.
compensation.
So I mean, so we're looking at Veterans for Peace is reaching sort of an international outlook. We have a chapter in Vietnam, which is really by one of our members, who's expatriate, who's living in Vietnam, and they're doing great work. There's another, but we got a request from the UK. There are a number of ex-soldiers from the British service, and they said that they wanted a chapter of their own, and we had never really had somebody that wasn't an American soldier, and we voted to accept them as a chapter, And
Wonderful.
I think we want to build more and more. We have relationships with Korean soldiers that were victims of Agent Orange, and with Australian soldiers.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
So, you know, my dream, again, I'm always one of these big dreamers. My dream for VFP in the future, and for soldiers and victims, combatants, because not everybody's considered a soldier, they're fighting to survive, that we have sometime in the future a world forum for victims of war, and that these soldiers speak out like Winter Soldier, that they speak out and tell their stories, but it's on an international scale, so they can be from Africa and Latin America, Israel, Palestine. You know, you have refuseniks in Israel, you have Palestinian combatants, all refusing to enter and engage in war anymore. They've lived through it, they've seen it, and they've seen the horror of war. And so I would love to see that on an international scale.
where would
It could be
meeting
it could be at the UN, it could be in another country. I mean, I was at a World Social Forum in Venezuela. I know there's one going on in Brazil, you know.
Yeah.
It could be whatever country is willing to host something like that. I would hope it would be the US. But, you know, it could be anywhere. It could be in London. It could be anywhere. But I think it brings all of us together in one voice. And oftentimes people say we're talking to the choir. Well, you know, I work for the Oregon Symphony. And when you put those musicians together and perform before an audience, that lays them flat because they have it all together. They're all singing in time and with one voice, in a sense, you know, that it has such a power over people. So if we can become the choir that resonates throughout the world with a voice that sings for peace and justice and not war, death, and destruction, then we can find a better world. It's a start.
I've got this, I've been listening to you about 90%, but in the back of my mind, I wanted a place to say what I'm going to say right now, because we're talking about your adventures in South America and all over the place, and it's really admirable. But on May 1st of this year, where were you?
I was at the May 1st demonstration. The worker, you know, this is another thing where people have to understand that.
That's a trick question, of course.
Yeah, the May 1st is actually International Workers' Day, and people have to go back in history and understand that was the beginning of the 8-hour day, and people fought. There was a Haymaker massacre in which people were killed, and people throughout the world were so inspired by the labor movement in this country that was speaking up for lesser hours, that they started doing that around the world, and they made it an international celebration.
They did it again in this year in Havana, Cuba, where I was.
Yeah.
There was 1 million Cubans marching in a beautiful, perfect weather May Day morning, and Fidel's brother was addressing the crowd, and there were banners all over the place, and the side of the whole building was an image of Che Guevara and little kids and old folks, people in wheelchairs, and it was just inspiring. I felt so good to say I was there. I've not been all the places you've been, but I was there on this May Day.
Oh, what a time to be there, you know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, you know, we're actually, like I said, our national convention, and it's open to anybody who wants to go.
Yeah.
And go on our national website, which is www.veteransforpeace.org, and they can click on the buttons down below for the convention. But it's we're actually looking at, because we've been covering the Middle East a lot for the last few years. Well, we'll continue to do that, but we're forgetting about Latin America and the Caribbean, and we wanted to do a focus on Latin America. So we're actually, you know, Alice Walker is going to be one of the speakers. Alarcon from Cuba is going to be there speaking.
Yes.
We're looking at doing actually some of the organizers in Miami are organizing a tour to Haiti, and Alice Walker is going to lead that tour. So the people there are still suffering, you know. And
talk about your impossible situations,
right.
Haiti.
Right.
They're
and if you want to talk about the economy, I mean, people talk about, you know, like I said, capitalism versus other kinds of systems. And if you look at Haiti is capitalism to its extreme, and the poverty that it's created and has been tremendous, you know. And the corporations that overthrow the government over and over again whenever they get somebody in that's trying to change for social good.
Let's bring Aristide back.
I agree, Aristide. There's a number of great books on that too.
Is Hugo going to survive his fight with cancer?
That's a big question. It's a big question, and it's a question whether, you know, a movement can survive without a leader. And the thing with Occupy is that it's not about leadership. It's about people coming together. And when I was down in Venezuela, I mean, a lot of the movements there would always say to me, you know, we love Chavez because he stands up for opening these doors for us to speak and come together to build our Constitution.
And land for everybody.
Yeah. But, you know, there's still battles going on there. There's major battles.
As long as there's a CIA, there will be battles going on.
And so, but if he's trying to build, they've tried to build a movement that if he passes away, the movement continues. And I think people don't want to go back to the way it was before. And so we will see. I mean, there's not just Venezuela. There's Ecuador, and there's, you know, Bolivia. You know, we have all these various things that there's the Bolivarian movement that's taken place in Latin America, and they're looking at, you know, not kowtowing to the international banks. And
I'm going to start an organization in this country. I have been talking about it to a few friends. It's called Bolivarian Revolution of North America, Borina. That's what we need in our country.
I think that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Look, we got 5 minutes left, but we got about a couple of minutes. You and I can talk for a bit more. I'd like to hear from you whatever you think would be of use for the viewers to hear you say from all we've been talking about, or whatever is on your mind.
Well, I think one thing is that, you know, people always ask how can they do something? How, you know, it seems like such a big issue, and there are so many different issues that I say get involved in one. You know, get a start wherever you are. You can do it if you're into the electoral system. Then look at your candidates and what they're really saying and what they've done in the past, and make your choices. That's one way. Another is if you, and I don't, because I felt betrayed by that. But there are other ways. You know, you can support Veterans for Peace by going online. You can support other organizations like the Portland Central American Solidarity Committee, which is doing work around Latin America and Central America. Those are important organizations dealing with Agent Orange issues. You know, we have a number of different groups. Our group is, should say what it is. It's the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Campaign, and people can look that up. But, you know, we're working on legislation right now, which is H.R. 2634, Victims of Agent Orange Relief Act, sponsored by Bob Filner, who actually won't be returning to the Senate, but we'll be working on redesigning that to actually include even more people. These are things that people can get involved. If you know a vet, you know, stop by and don't say thank you for your service. Most of us don't like it. Welcome them home.
Welcome them home.
We welcome home.
And with that, they're waving some signs at me, and I'm going to need to stop. So it's close for us, time for us to stop and get ready to say goodnight. And keep your pens and pencils handy in case there's something in the closing credits that you want to make note of. I invite you to give us feedback, both positive and negative. Oh, I've got to tell you about public service announcements. There's the
There you
first
go.
one. To get the Dr. Don local broadcast schedule, go to my website, www.donbaham.com, and click on present day activities. And if you want to see my show on the web, go to my website again. This time, click on favorite links. There's probably a couple of hundred shows through the years on there, all sorts of guests I've had. Not many are quite as interesting as Daniel, but some pretty good ones, yeah. And the ACLU, whoa, the ACLU, without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be all gone by now. Starting with the Reagan Revolution, the American Civil Liberties Union, thank goodness for the ACLU, protecting our civil liberties. What do we have next? To get Dr. Don shows broadcast by other stations around the country, ask your local public access station to go to www.pegmedia.org. Those local studios can broadcast my shows from where they are, whether on the East Coast, South Coast, or whatever. And what else do we have here? Oh, corporate personhood. That's my favorite now. They got to end corporate personhood, particularly since Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court. Go to movetoamend.org. We've got to eliminate corporate personhood so that America can belong to ordinary citizenry again, much better than before. Okay. Thanks for watching. And remember, KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, not that KFC, Dr. Don's KFC, I said that. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable. To you too. And you too. You too. And everybody in the control room. Thanks again for watching. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, good night.